moms out there might say, I did that. I did all those things. I showed affection. I went first, and they still are not reciprocating or doing it. And I think sometimes we have to give grace to our spouse to go, they just don't think like we do. And I really believe that sometimes I can do 1,000 nice things for Greg, and he's very appreciative of them, but he just does not think, oh, I should do that for her.
Yes.
So at some point, you have to decide that a conversation, a calm conversation, is worth it to just say, hey, just in case you were wondering, this would really make me feel loved this week.
Hey moms, welcome back to the Gather Moms podcast. We are so glad that you are with us as we are talking about mom struggles. Why do we need to talk about mom struggles, Rebecca?
Well, who out there doesn't struggle?
That's right.
I mean, can I get a class from them?
For sure. Well, and that's the thing is, I think some people, we are never out here acting like kid experts, and we're certainly not even acting like mom experts. Mm-hmm. What we know, though, as a mom community is the fastest way for a mom to get help is other moms.
Right.
Because those other mamas get what you're going through. They're going to be able to sympathize, empathize, and offer help in a way that like nobody else can. And ideally, you have some mamas in your corner that are like, okay, sis, here's some help. And also here's Jesus, and point you back to him.
That's right.
And so we are all struggling together. We just kind of want to normalize that
yes.
Nobody has it figured out. And what we have the opportunity to do here is talk about those things and get the help that we need.
Yes. In fact, I was talking to a mom just the other day, and you know how sometimes when you give a mom advice, you get nervous?
Yeah,
So you're like, what if it doesn't work for her?
Yeah.
So I think I said to her, hey, listen, you might ask Jesus if what I just told you was okay, because I don't want to be telling you something that's not right.
Well, sure. And we always want to couch it in those terms, right? Of like, hey, this worked for me.
Right.
Or I know someone that this worked for.
Yes.
Because we never, like, it's kind of toxic to come to a mom with like, you have all the answers.
That's right.
Because you don't. Like this side of heaven, we do not know. Thankfully, we have the hope that, James promises us that if any of us lacks wisdom, we can ask God and he gives it to us.
Right.
So we have that hope and we can lean on the Lord to get the wisdom that we need. But none of us have all the answers.
No. Yeah. And I think in our best intentions, sometimes we might say something that's not going to be helpful to another mom. So just claim it, confess it.
Yes.
Be like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And hey, go back to Jesus first and ask him.
Yeah, that's good. So not only are we all struggling together, but we also know that, just like we were talking about, that other moms help us get the help we need so much quicker than anything else. And so that's why right now we are offering you guys this online community for moms. So Rebecca and I are meeting with you every other Thursday, and we're talking about one of these mom struggles. And we hope that it feels like to you that you're sitting in our living room and we are talking about this together. We wanted to do it online so that moms, no matter what country you're in, what state you're in, what state you are in, like literally emotionally in your home, you could join us in any way. And so if you want to be a part of that, just check out in the show notes. We've got the links there because we want you with us.
Yes.
So today, I want us to talk about the struggle of marriage, because I think that our marriages change so much when we become moms, right?
Yes.
Like it's a very different deal than when it was just the two of you. Now, just the two of you was hard.
Yes.
It's not like it was easy.
They can get on your nerves.
Yeah. Did you and Greg have any like weird things that you fought about or weird disconnections early on in marriage?
Well, yeah, because I thought I was perfect.
Did you?
Yes, and then he didn't. And so I felt very offended by the fact that my husband was not just doing anything I wanted.
Because he pointed out your flaws, or?
Yes, I have a very strong husband. And, I guess I thought he would rescue me. Like if I cried, he would, what can I do? If I, left the room during a fight, he would come find me. Yeah, he doesn't. That doesn't happen. And that's good because he didn't give in to my selfish whims.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I think it's made me more responsible for my own actions.
Ooh.
So it's been good for us, but it's been a long journey to get there.
Okay.
Because, I still to this day, when I walk away, hope that he comes to find me, and he still does not.
That's amazing, because one of our major issues with Jeremy and I is that he chases after me.
Oh,
because he wants to resolve the conflict immediately.
Yes.
And it's a good thing that he wants to resolve it, but also it's a little selfish on his side because he doesn't like conflict laying out there.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily for me. It's in part for him.
Yeah.
He does not like anything to be unresolved.
Well, I want Greg to come find me because it makes me feel like I'm right. So I guess that's a little selfish on my part too.
This man is not coming to find me to tell me I'm right. Oh, no, ma'am.
Okay.
He is coming to find me to resolve the conflict because he doesn't want it laying out there.
Yes.
And I can get real caught up in my emotions. And I know that I need a minute to let the Holy Spirit catch up with Kate.
Yeah.
Because Kate's out here wilding out on, whatever.
Yes.
And it isn't my true self. And so sometimes I'll say to him, okay, hey, I need a minute. And he does not like that.
Yeah.
And so, that has been one of our struggles early on. Like there were a couple of things where he just was like, man, I feel like I got kind of duped in this marriage thing. Like, one was he told me before we got married, he was like, the only thing I don't like to do is iron. So if you could iron, that would be great. I think I ironed for that man one time. And I was like, you know what? I don't actually like this either.
Yeah.
So
I can't believe he asked you to iron. That's so interesting.
Yeah. But now none of us iron. Like he now intentionally buys only clothes
That's right.
that do not require the iron.
Yes. Yes.
If for some reason this man has left his laundry in the dryer too long, by the way, Jeremy does his own laundry.
That's not happening in my house.
If he has left his laundry in the dryer and it's gotten wrinkly, he'll just rewash the whole thing. Because he's not willing to.
Yes. Yes.
He's not willing to get the iron out.
How do I get my husband to do his own laundry? How does that happen?
Well, something happened, I think, when, I think by the time we had the third kid, I think we sat down and I was like, yo, I can't keep up with all of this, And so I think that's been a good thing in our marriage over the years is we've just kind of gone back to the table and put all the duties of the home and the children back in a pile.
Yeah.
And gone, okay, who needs to take what at this season of our lives?
Right.
Because things change.
Yes.
And like right now I work a full-time job and we have 3 kids. He works a full-time job and we have 3 kids. So we had to decide, what does this look like now?
Have you seen that meme where it's like 1 kid equals 1 kid, 2 kid equals 5 kids, and 3 kids equals 4,271 kids?
It exponentially changes the whole thing. That's
Yes.
like so real.
Yes.
It's so real. So when we went on our honeymoon, we were like staying at this cabin and in the mountains and everything. And so it was kind of like an Airbnb situation. So I cooked breakfast for us every morning. So this man
nice.
got it in his mind that was about to be his life. Ma'am, I cook breakfast on like Saturdays, but he was severely disappointed because he thought he was getting breakfast for life.
Yes.
No.
The
other big one for us early was, it was like his first birthday of us being married. And he woke up in the morning and I was like, good morning. And, like my plan was that we were going to go have dinner that night to celebrate his birthday. In his family growing up, birthday was morning to night, if not more than that.
All the celebrations.
So it was all about that person all day long. Every meal, every experience was about them. And so we ended up having a fight that night because he was like, I just don't understand why, like on your birthday, I asked you what you wanted for breakfast. I drove 30 minutes to the special place you wanted to pick it up.
Oh my gosh. And
I brought
you
it
did
back
not
to
do
you.
that?
I'm like, bro, I didn't know this was the expectation. But
funny.
So much of that in our marriages are like these unmet expectations.
Yes.
Potentially unrealistic expectations.
Exactly.
That we have set that we've never communicated.
Right.
And so I think we know, just research tells us over and over the things that people fight about the most in marriage are, what do you think?
Money.
Yes, money. What else?
Sex.
Yes.
Household duties.
And then raising children. I think.
Raising children. Yeah. Oh, that's kind of a big one. Okay.
And so the thing is that this whole idea of 2 becoming 1 is not easy. It's not an easy thing. I mean, just think how much conflict you had with just like your college roommates trying to live with them and them having difficult personalities or whatever. Now you are strapped to this other human being for life. And sometimes that can feel like, oh my gosh,
yes.
Like I have to live with this for the rest of my life.
Yes.
That can be a really hard reality.
Yes. Especially when you have hope that it will change and you and I are 20 years down the road going, well, it's kind of still the same.
The truth of the matter is they're probably not going to change. And so you have to make the decision, do I change or do I let this go?
Right.
Because your other alternative is just to be mad about it for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And that's not good for anyone. the thing I think about, even though marriage is hard, and this whole idea of two becoming one is hard, the hope that we have here is that it's a biblical mandate. And so anytime that we have a biblical mandate, something that is a command from God, we are also equipped with the power of God to fulfill it.
Yes.
Right? On those things, we are never left on our own devices in order to be able to pull it off. God knows better. And so we have the hope that, yes, even though it's hard, he gives us the power to be able to do it well. So I wanted us to talk about a few ways that we can help in this marriage struggle, some things that have helped us along the way. Jeremy and I's marriage is certainly not perfect, but I can tell you that it has calmed down a lot over the years.
Yes, praise God. Yes.
And we're in a better place. New things come up. And there are always new things to work through. You know, you may go through a health crisis or a financial crisis or a crisis with your kids, and that's going to always bubble up some new issue to tackle. But I think there are some concepts that we could keep in mind that will really help us along the way.
Yeah.
One is that I think that we remember that when we have a conflict with our spouse, that we would picture us fighting together on the same side against the enemy who wants to destroy us. So often when we get in a fight with our spouse, we see each other on the other side of the conflict.
Right.
Right? That like we're battling against each other. And it's like you wanting Greg to come over to your side and say, you were right, ma'am.
Yes. I would love that. That sounds amazing.
And so it pits us against each other, and we see them as our enemy. We see them as, I need to defeat them. If I'm going to win, my point has to be the best. I have
need
to
the
come.
last word. I got to make that little jab that's like, oh, you can't say nothing to that because I just like hit it right.
Yes. So, but if we can remember that, you know, our marriages, the Bible talks about that our marriages are a picture of Christ and the church. So that's like this, and it says that it's a mystery, right? It's this supernatural, magical thing. And so if we can keep that in mind, we know that we have an enemy who would love to destroy that.
Right.
His whole objective on this earth is to steal, kill, and destroy. And so when we are fighting, when we are in conflict with one another, we need to remember that we're on the same side of the fight.
Yes.
We are fighting together against a common enemy, and that common enemy is not your spouse. And so if we can remember that, hey, the reason that we communicate is to restore intimacy. Mm-hmm. The reason that we're communicating is to get back on the same page, not for me to one-up you or you to one-up me, but to get back on the same page.
Right.
I think that little changes the way that we talk to each other.
It's that whole idea of unity, that for a moment there's disunity in your marriage because you may have different opinions or different ideas or different whatever, but that the goal is that you get back into that space of unity, because in unity there's peace.
Right.
And then you can exist together in a way that's comfortable and enjoyable.
Yeah.
But as long as you've got that disunity, it's like anything they do gets on your nerves.
Yes.
And even if you think you've resolved the problem, but you really haven't, you have this little bit of bitterness still in the back of your head that just keeps rearing up. And so I think the idea is that, you know what, I want to be in unity with my spouse because that's the best place to be.
Yeah.
It affords us the best opportunity to have a good relationship.
Yeah.
So anything that the enemy tries to put in there like a little crack or stick to mess up your unity, that's him trying to destroy what God has made beautiful.
That's right.
So I love that you're saying we have to get back on the same side and say, okay, let's figure this out together in such a way that we can get back to unity.
That's right. I think one of the ways that we can get back on the same side is by just doing kind of some mental, emotional work of remembering why you fell in love with that person. You know, it's so easy for us to just start piling on this narrative of, you know, he's not meeting my needs. He's not helpful. He does the wrong things all the time. He snores and I can't sleep, right?
Yep.
We can start piling on a certain narrative, but we can do the emotional and mental work of instead contributing to the narrative in our minds of why we fell in love with this person. Like that endears me so much to Jeremy. When I remember my 20-year-old self, when I remember what made me fall in love with him, it just starts, you know, the people talk about so much, there's so much science that talks about how we have power over the neural pathways that we are putting in our minds. And you can create ruts in your minds where you are contributing to a certain narrative about your spouse, but you also have the power to contribute to a different narrative about them.
Yep.
And so if we are thoughtful in the way that we think about them, the way that we talk about them to other people, then we can start creating more healthy neural pathways that help us remember the reason why we love them.
Well, and the good that they bring to our life and how we would miss it without them.
Yeah.
You know, like my husband's been out of town for a week on a mission trip, and part of me was excited because I was like, yeah, girl, I'm going to eat what I want, watch what I want.
For sure.
But then you do start to miss the things that endear you to that person.
Yeah.
And part of me wants to pick up his socks again. Like,
Yeah.
go ahead and leave him out I'll give you a week, and then we're back to you got to pick him up. But
Yeah.
it's those things that endear you to your spouse because they add something to your life that you don't have without them.
Yes, I agree. I think the other thing that we can do that really makes a big difference in our marriages is praying for our spouse. We often want to pray, God, change this or that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our first prayer, right?
Yes.
You know, it's this thing that's really driving us crazy. And so we just want to rub the genie lamp of God and be like, hey, if you could change this about them, then that would be great.
Right.
I read The Power of a Praying Wife or whatever early on in my marriage. And I'm so thankful I did, because one of the things she said at the beginning is instead of praying, God, change him, the prayer becomes, God, change me. And so there's so much power in looking inwardly about, hey, God, it is really making me nuts that he is doing this or that. Would you change me, change my heart? Help me to see him as you see him. Help me to see him as your precious child. Help me to love him that way, you know, and celebrating him even in prayer, and then praying for change in your own heart. Instead of trying to go to God as like a Mr. Fix-It of like, could you tweak this about him? And that makes a really big difference. And I think showing them love, you know, there are so many women who I think that we talk to and they don't feel like their spouses are romantic.
Right.
And that's a very real thing. You know, we are definitely struggling with that. You know, it's like your love language is gifts.
Girl, yeah, you better be bringing me something back from that mission trip.
And so, you know, so then it's like, okay, you know, like, okay, let's calibrate our...
I know, because now there's a pressure, right?
Yes.
Yes, and he doesn't know the pressure because I didn't tell him.
Okay.
I just assume that he is supposed to know these things, and so when he doesn't meet them, I'm like, it's your fault, but he didn't even know.
Right, exactly. And so we're all out here, you know, feeling some resentment and stuff like that. I think I would just challenge us to go first. That, you know, yes, we can get really onto our husbands when it's like, well, you don't buy me flowers anymore. Isn't that an old song?
No.
You don't sing me love songs.
Oh, maybe it's that new one. She just won a Grammy for it, I think, about I can buy myself flowers.
Okay. Miley Cyrus did a little flip on it.
Yes.
Which, ma'am, frankly, you can buy yourself flowers. Listen.
And I do. He didn't buy me flowers for Valentine's. He did other things.
Yeah.
But I wanted them, so I went out and got them myself.
Okay, great. You're going through Costco, ma'am. Just grab some. They're on the way out. Just stick some flowers in there. But I think if we could just go first, if, you know, these things that we're wanting, like, are you doing that for your spouse? You know, could you put a card like on his dashboard, sneak out to his truck or whatever, and so that when he gets in it the next morning, he sees a message from you saying how much you love him, how thankful you are for him. What if you stopped by his work and surprised him and said, hey, I'm outside. I got you a Dutch Bros. Will you come out? And you've written a sweet note on the top of his cup. What if you set a reminder on your phone that every Monday it reminds you to text him and say, how can I pray for you this week?
Oh, that's so nice.
Like, how can we go first? How can we model for them just out of a love for them? You know, we're so quick to be critical of the ways that they're not showing us affection. But really, guys, I mean, so much of that is from like all this rom-coms and all of our culture that teaches all of this stuff. Like, it's okay for you. Are you doing that? Are you demonstrating affection for him and the way he receives it?
Well, and I do think that you have situations where moms out there might say, I did that. I did all those things. I showed affection. I went first, and they still are not reciprocating or doing it. Yeah. And I think sometimes we have to give grace to our spouse to go, they just don't think like we do. And I really believe that sometimes I can do 1,000 nice things for Greg, and he's very appreciative of them, but he just does not think, oh, I should do that for her.
Yes.
So at some point, you have to decide that a calm conversation, is worth it to just say, hey, just in case you were wondering, this would really make me feel loved this week.
Yes.
And give them the opportunity to do that without well, if I do it enough, maybe he'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just need it black and white.
No, I think that's a good point, because if you just heard what I was saying of that you're doing this in order to get reciprocation, I think you're going to be disappointed, because that's manipulative, and we don't want to love someone out of manipulation. You know, we want to just love them because we love them. But you're right that if things keep going on and you're not feeling like he's showing you love, then yeah, have the conversation. And at some point, mama, you may have to make the decision that this is just not who he is, and it's not going to change. So you have to change. Like, if you're going to stay happy in this marriage, what is that going to look like for you is the really hard truth.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest issues I see when couples start having kids is that we can easily start lumping our husbands in as one of our children. And I wanted to stop down on this issue for a little bit, because I think this is what I'm seeing over and over and over. It's affecting finances, it's affecting happiness, it's affecting sex lives, because this kind of weird distortion starts to happen. Both people contribute to this problem. He contributes by doing things that the kids do, like throwing laundry or wet towels on the floor, leaving dishes around, maybe even riling the kids up at bedtime, where you're like, are you actively trying to be one of the children instead of being a contributing partner in maintaining this home?
Yeah.
You know, it can feel like, it's like you're actively working against me. Like, I'm trying to be the adult in the room and you're acting like a teenage boy. You know?
Oh, and they love it. They love to act like a teenage boy with their kids.
Yes.
They think it's fun.
But it can be really disheartening for the mom who has been contributing, setting things up for bedtime. She's exhausted. She wants to get him to bed. And here is the Hulk comes out and he's throwing the kids on the couch. Like, there's a space for that. But if that's happening over and over and over, that can start putting deposits in her bank of, this is not my partner. He's another one of my kids.
Yep.
And that can create a really toxic situation. I think moms contribute to this. And I don't think that we talk about this side enough, because moms, I want to talk really frankly to you. I think we contribute to this by taking on all of the duties of the home and the children on our own shoulders. You know, there was this feminism movement, and we've had multiple waves of them. I think right now we're in like third wave feminism. And there were some really positive things that came out of that, right? It gave us the right to vote. It advanced causes for women everywhere. It helped with their health care. There were all kinds of things that came out of those things. But one of the really kind of terrible things that happened where it fell short was that women, yes, went to work. Yay. But then they still kept doing all of the other things they were doing before.
Yeah.
And nothing ever really shifted. So instead of then there being more balance, women are at work. No. Yeah, the women went to work, but they're still the ones doing all the laundry, cooking all the meals, keeping up with the kids, keeping the house clean.
Yeah.
And what has come out of that is we have these women who were still believing the lie from previous generations that to be a good mom or to be a good woman is to have a certain kind of looking house, certain kind of children. You have to look a certain way.
Uh-huh.
And so now we have women who more than ever before are struggling with anxiety and depression, and we are quiet martyrs in our own home.
Yeah.
To the point that we aren't quiet. You know, somebody loses it.
Yes.
And so I just want to say to moms, like, I would argue that if your husband isn't helping share the load at home, likely he is more willing than you're giving him credit for to help. He loves you and your children. However, he is coming out of the same cultural junk that you are. And he probably feels to a certain extent like inept, like he doesn't know where his place is. What can he say? Where can he help? He feels ill-equipped. And it might be that when he does try and help, you're correcting everything that he's doing, right?
I was just thinking that. I think they help differently. And so when their help looks different than ours, we think they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But actually, I think that's the beautiful part of a marriage is that they bring this new side of things, and your kids might receive the help he gives even better than yours.
Yes.
Because it speaks to them in their language, their love language.
Yeah. Like, we have these moms who, and honestly, I was like this. I was like this with our first kid. If I wanted to go out of town, I would prepare meals for Jeremy and Caleb, you know, because Caleb was little. I would prepare meals for them before I left. It took me until, honestly, like the third kid before I was like, wait a minute, this man he was 26 when we got married. Like, he had fed him. Like, the man knows he is not going to let himself starve to death.
No.
And he's certainly not going to let our children starve to death. Now, is he going to feed the kid the organic baby food that I made and froze and left behind and labeled,
Well, listen, I'm not feeding my kid that either because I didn't make that. So I'm with you, Jeremy.
But, is he going to drive through McDonald's 3 times a day? Okay, maybe. But is he going to keep those kids alive? Yes.
Yep.
And so how am I negatively contributing to our relationship and our marriage when I over control those situations instead of letting him have ownership over those things?
Right.
Like, I'm contributing to my own bitterness, resentment, and burnout because I'm controlling it. And then I'm contributing to this dynamic where now he's one of my children instead of my partner.
And they are going to stop offering to help if you keep correcting them. Because, I just think men are like, fine, it sounds like you don't need me, so I'm out. I think women are the opposite. Man, you can correct me all day, and I'm probably still going to offer to help you next time. I think men are like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah, but I think, think about it. Think of every time you offered to help somebody, and every time you did, you didn't do it right. You were being corrected. They came back and did it behind you. When you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, then I just won't help.
Right.
Because it just doesn't make sense for me to waste my time and energy to do this.
Yes.
And I think that we're doing that. So here's the deal, sis. The health of your marriage is the greatest contributing factor to the overall health of your children. Countless studies back that up. So we have to look at these issues. We have to look at our sex lives, our finances, our parenting issues, how we're contributing to household duties. We have to stop down and take the time to look at how those things are going so that we can fight together for our marriage against a common enemy. And so especially in this area of household contributions, there was a time when I was home with the kids, and so I didn't have an outside job. And so I took on more of the household responsibilities. But I have to tell you guys, that was some advice Jeremy and I got early on, where at different seasons, and usually there will be some friction before we get to this conversation because we start noticing, something's not working.
Yep.
But we sit down and we just throw it all back into the pile. Who's mowing the grass? Who's taking out the trash? Who's maintaining the cars? Who's maintaining the finances? Who's doing tuck-ins? Who's getting kids up? Like, go through the list of all the things that you and your spouse are doing every day and start dividing it up. Mm-hmm. And then listen, when those kids are ready, you start giving them some of these things to do.
You invite them into the conversation.
That's right. That's right. But I want to tell you that, remember that your marriage is a reflection of Christ and the church. And the thing I want out of my marriage more than anything is for it to show an unbelieving world how much Jesus loves his bride. And so it is worth it for me to do the work. I want our extended family members that don't know Jesus to look at us and say, what is so different? Why is your marriage working? Mm-hmm. And that we can tell them what the magic sauce is.
Yes.
And that is Jesus.
Yes.
Your marriage is worth fighting for. Now, I want to say a few things because I think we've been talking in general about general marital health issues, but I want to bring up something because you may be listening to this and you're like, Kate, you don't understand. So if you're in a marriage where you are not safe physically or emotionally, we want to encourage you to get to a safe place. If you're in a marriage where your spouse has been unfaithful, you need to get help and get to a safe space. If your spouse is abusing drugs or alcohol or has an addiction that is harming your family, get to a safe place. We are talking here about marriages that are safe. There are just areas that could be, if they aren't looked at, then they could cause major schisms in the relationship. Okay? Those other few incidents where I described, Mama, you don't need to suffer in silence. Get out and get help. Those things that is biblically mandated for you to be able to do those things. You are not stepping outside of God's will. I will say this. I believe in the power of God to restore any hard thing. However, that does not mean that you and your children need to stay in an unsafe environment. But I do want you to let your community know what's going on and pray until the power of God is unleashed. And I'll say this. As someone who, I've been doing ministry alongside my husband for 20 years, you have too. We have talked to countless married couples. And these issues that we've talked about today, finances, issues with intimacy, resentment, unmet expectations, you guys, all of those things, I have seen God restore and work in power in marriages. We have gotten to walk alongside a beautiful group of women who, when they started coming to our church, their husbands were not believers and they were not coming to church. And so they decided, well, we're going to go. And they started going to a women's group. And they continued to pray for their husbands, love their husbands. Now, you guys, a few years later, their husbands are now leading life groups. They came to the saving knowledge of Jesus. They are leading their families spiritually. And so we have seen broken marriages restored. We have seen God do incredible things. So I just want to encourage you that your marriage is not too far gone. And if you're just feeling some of these little things where you're like, oh, I'm just feeling like my marriage doesn't feel great, I feel irritated or resentful or bitter, give that to God and just start doing the work. It can be better. We have seen it and we want that for you.
And we encourage you to find a trusted woman in your life that is farther along in marriage, because honestly, those are the best people to talk to.
Yeah.
And share these concerns with her. Because I think sometimes when you start to speak out loud the things that are happening in your heart, either the person listening can go, okay, hey sis, we need to work on that with you, because that's actually an issue between you and God. Or, you know what, we've experienced that in our marriage. Let me tell you what we did.
Yeah.
Or, I think we need professional help here. So
Yes.
let me help you find that person.
Yes.
I think that you can find a woman in your life that's farther along in marriage, that loves Jesus, that would love to be a resource for you.
For sure. I agree with that completely. Moms, we love you. We want you to have strong marriages. We want you to thrive in your marriage. We are here if we can support you, and we will see you next time.
Bye, moms.